guys, welcome to When Spirit Talks. I'm your host, Stefanie Ruth. Let's dive into spirituality because when spirit talks, it's time to listen. In today's episode, we talk about our 8 clair-abilities. So let's get into it. We've all heard about psychic abilities, and if you're a human, you are born with the ability to tap into your psychic senses. Now, some of us have an easier time connecting with them from an early age, but we can all learn to develop some of our psychic senses. I teach this in my 6-week program, Psychic Power Portal. Although I write about 5 different types of clairsenses in my book, Your Sacred Journey, the Ultimate Guidebook to Align Your Mind, Body, and Spirit, and I give you some very specific exercises to help you develop them, this is going to be a simple breakdown on the 8 psychic senses that we all have and my own personal experiences with them. The first one we're going to talk about is clairvoyance. Now, this is often the psychic sense that you really think about when you think of a psychic or what a psychic does. And clairvoyance is your ability to see things with your mind's eye or your third eye. So once you start to open your third eye, you might begin to notice that you gain psychic information through your visual senses. And you can start working on this by meditating, practicing visualization, or using Reiki to help open up and balance your third eye chakra. When you are tapping into clairvoyance, you are aware of that visual stimuli that's coming into view and the meaning behind those signals. So, did you ever see 11:11 on the clock several days in a row? Do you see the same animal appearing each day? So it could be in real life, you look out the window, you see a deer in your backyard, and then you're on the computer and you read an article about a deer, or you see a picture with a deer in it. All of these things are showing you things. Sometimes you might even see visual stimuli with changes in electrical signals. So you might see flickers of light in your appliances, or you might even see those little shadows or twinkles or stars in your own eyes, or something out of the corner of your eye when no one else around you is seeing that. Now, when I'm tapped into this sense, I can see spirit, angels, departed loved ones. I might even pick up flashbacks of memories or static pictures or silhouettes. And a lot of times, these visual insights represent psychic information from the past, present, or the future. There was one time when I did a distance Reiki session for someone in the UK, and I remember I had seen a bunch of orange butterflies during the session. So of course, as I mentioned before, whenever I'm doing remote sessions with people, I'm always getting these psychic downloads or psychic insights, and I always write them down so my client can read them over after the session and start to integrate those messages. So I ended up writing down that I had seen a bunch of orange butterflies, and it didn't mean anything to the client in that moment, but later in the week, maybe a few days later, they actually sent me a picture of this scene where there were so many butterflies all around, and there were these lovely orange flowers. So there are a lot of times when I'm picking up things through clairvoyance, and it's not something that potentially already happened, but it's going to happen in the future. So when you're dealing with clairvoyance, it could be something from the past that you've seen and you're seeing that psychic imprint, but it could also be something you're seeing in the present moment. So energy surrounding a specific person in that moment in time, as well as future things that might come up for them. The second psychic sense we're going to talk about is clairsentience. Now, clairsentience is your ability to physically sense or feel things in your body. You can practice expanding this by balancing and strengthening your root chakra and your solar plexus chakra. If you have clairsentience, you often feel different shifts and changes in your physical body. So you might notice changes in temperature, as if you walked into a pocket of cold air. You might get chills or goosebumps. You might feel your stomach drop, like that feeling when you're on a roller coaster and you're going down and like physically your stomach feels like it shifts. You might be experiencing that in your own body. You might feel butterflies in your chest or find that it's difficult to breathe or feel pressure. You might feel pain or notice some tightness in a body part. These are all signs that you are dealing with clairsentience. Now, when I'm tapped into this sense, and it often does happen when I'm working with energy and with my clients, I can often feel exactly where my clients are experiencing blockages or specific sensations in their own body because I am feeling them in my own body. For example, if my clients are experiencing bouts of anxiety, I physically feel that restriction in my own breath as I'm breathing. So that's just an example of what clairsentience is and how it might show up for you in your own body. Now, the third sense that I want to talk about is clairaudience. Clairaudience is your ability to hear signs from spirit. So just as clairvoyance was your ability to see with your second sight or even your physical sight, clairaudience is your ability to hear psychic signals. So to work on this, you want to focus on ear chakra healing to kind of spark this psychic sense. With this sense, you might notice that you're drawn to auditory stimuli. This could be sounds that potentially no one around you can hear. So your ears might start ringing, or you might hear buzzing or whispering, or you feel like someone called your name and, you might say, what? Yeah. And they're looking at you like you're crazy because no one called your name. So when you think about clairaudience, it can also be things that you're hearing with your actual ears that other people might be able to listen to, but they're not getting that same intuitive connection. So you might be drawn to certain words in conversations or words or phrases in songs. You might even be drawn to melodies in songs that cause you to feel a certain way. And just as an example, so the day I released my podcast, I remember it was like really interesting for me because in the span of like maybe an hour, I heard 3 different people mention the word podcast throughout the day. Now, they weren't talking about my podcast, and I wasn't talking to them about my podcast. They were just talking amongst themselves, but the words that were coming to me were podcast. So it was like you are in tune with words and sounds, and that is how spirit is speaking to you. When I'm working with people, I often hear words or phrases or even paragraphs of messages from spirit, angels, and departed loved ones that I then pass on to my clients when working with them, so they can kind of hear the messages from spirit and what they need to know. Our fourth clairsense is claircognizance. And this one is always a little bit tricky because there's no way to really prove it. And this is when you just know that something is true. You just know it. You feel it in your gut. You feel it in your bones. You just know that something is true. You just know that something's going to happen even when you can't explain why. And by opening your crown chakra, you can start to tap into this sense. And it's like this might come up when you just know you're going to get that job that you applied for, or you just know that big things are going to happen, or you just know that something is going to come up for you, and it actually does. So one example of this is knowing that you might want to take a different route to work. So you're driving to work, you're taking your normal commute, and then something just tells you, okay, I think I got to go a different way. So you take the other route, you just follow that gut, you follow your intuition, and then you find out later that an accident might have happened on the typical route that you take to work. So again, spirit is talking to you in different ways, but with this clairsense, it's really hard to pinpoint or explain it to other people because there might not be evidence to help you explain that. It's just something that you know. Now, the fifth clair-abilities, clairaudience. Clairaudience is your ability to smell signs from spirit. So if you think about all of these, there's always a connection between the psychic senses and some kind of sensory experience or some kind of physical sense. So with clairaudience, it's important to start opening your third eye chakra and really paying attention to your nose and the way you intake information in that sense. If you're experiencing clairaudience, you might smell things that are not in your physical environment. So you might all of a sudden smell certain flowers or perfume or smoke. And if you ask anyone else, like, do you smell that? They're going to say, no, I don't smell anything. And that's when you know that there's something deeper. So this is a sign often that comes with departed loved ones. They often leave you these signs so that you know they're with you. And I remember I had a session with someone and I kept smelling baby powder after I heard the word grandma, and it was so strong. And again, after my client read the notes, my client told me that her grandmother always used baby powder. And so that was the indication that she was visiting. And this happens so often, but it's one of those clairsenses that often take a lot of work to get them. So if you're not experiencing this, don't worry. It is something you can work on. But for me, this is one of the later ones that I ended up getting myself. Now let's talk about number 6, which is clairtangency. Clairtangency is your ability to touch something and gain psychic insights from the object that you're touching. It could also be a person that you're touching. So to develop this skill, you want to work on balancing your sacral chakra and your hand chakras, your palm chakras. With this sense, you might get premonitions. You might see flashbacks or get any kind of information from the person, either that you're touching or the item that you're holding or touching. One example I can give is that one of my clients was doing an in-person Reiki session and she was wearing a ring. So normally I don't always go to my client's hands during a session. And for whatever reason, I just felt called that I needed to go there. And once I was at that position, I got a visual of her aunt. Now, again, I don't know her aunt, but she did tell me at the end of the session when I told her my insights that her aunt had given her that ring right before she passed away. So again, this is kind of your ability to get psychic insights from things that you're physically touching. The 7th clairsense is clairempathy. Now, this is similar to what you think of an empath experiencing. You can think of this sense, though, as being an empath on a much stronger and clearer level. So it's different. So empaths, we're very sensitive to energy around us. We can feel what other people are feeling, especially if they're near us. Like, it's just one of the things that we intuitively know. With clairempathy, there's a difference, because this is when you can feel the emotions and the energy of other people when they are not nearby. So this means they could be in a totally different country. They can be in a different city. It doesn't really matter, but you are tuned into that psychic, energetic connection. So you might feel the emotions of family members or loved ones who are halfway across the world. Now, to develop this sense, you should be working on balancing your heart chakra. And my experience with this, and there have been several, but this happened to me twice within like a week. So it always sticks out in my head. But I remember I was driving to work one day. Everything was fine. I had a great morning. I had a lot of energy. I drank my coffee and listening to my music. And all of a sudden, I just felt this deep sense of dread. It hit me out of nowhere. I felt anxious. I just didn't feel like myself at all. And as the morning went on, I just had this feeling that something was going to happen and it wasn't going to be a positive experience. again, I didn't know what the context was or why I was feeling that way until a few hours later when I found out that a family member had been rushed to the emergency room. So again, I was feeling that energy from the people that, I care about, and that is why I got those insights. Now, the last sense I want to talk about is clairgustance. And this ties into the one I talked about, which is clairaudience. Because again, if you remember, clairaudience is your ability to get psychic insight from your sense of smell. Clairgustance is tied into that because it's your ability to gain insight from your sense of taste. Now, if you remember, like if you were ever sick and your nose was really stuffy, you couldn't taste foods because those senses are connected. And it's the same with your psychic senses. These often come in together, or if you have one, you often will get the other one because they are so similar. So with this, you might taste something when you're not actually eating anything. And to develop the skill, you work on balancing the throat chakra. When I'm tapped into this sense, I can taste things that my clients might need to intake or consume, or I might taste things that belong and represent that person's deceased loved one. So I remember one day I was doing distance Reiki and I felt a male spirit nearby. And then all of a sudden I couldn't focus on anything but the taste of peppermint in my mouth. Now I wasn't eating peppermint, nothing smelled like peppermint, but that's all I could think about and that's all I tasted. It was so overwhelming that I did include it in my notes and I shared it with my client, who then told me that her grandfather always had a peppermint in his mouth wherever he went. So that male energy was her grandfather, who came through as a reminder that he's always with her. So those are the 8 clair-abilities that we can all grow and cultivate. Often, once you start expanding one, you'll find that the others start to roll in as well. With each psychic ability, there are 3 keys to developing them, and those are stillness, awareness, and trust. When you give yourself time to be still with yourself, your thoughts, and your experiences, your gifts pop through that pause. Awareness comes in because you need to be able to notice the subtle messages that come through. You need to become aware of them, and you need to start making connections. And then once you accept what you're receiving, you need to trust them and the messages that they reveal to you. And that's what will help them become stronger and clearer. So to learn more about psychic development, get a copy of my best-selling book, book a session with me, or be on the lookout to enroll in Psychic Power Portal, my psychic development course. Until next time, thanks for listening.